Ladies and gentlemen, champions and creators, I've got one question for you today. What would your life look like if nothing could shake you? What if insults didn't sting, failures didn't freeze you, and distractions didn't derail you? What if storms came and you still stood strong? What if opinions didn't move you and pressure didn't break you? That life begins when you train yourself to be unbothered. See, unbothered isn't arrogance, it's not apathy, it's discipline, it's emotional mastery, it's knowing who you are, whose you are, and where you're going. So deeply that no temporary noise can drown out your permanent purpose. Let's dive into the mindset, the strategy, and the power behind training yourself to be unbothered. The world is loud, chaotic, and full of things begging for your attention. Everywhere you turn, there's a new notification, a new opinion, a new crisis, a new comparison trying to break into your mind. But here's the truth that separates average lives from impactful ones. The people who achieve greatness are not those who never face distractions, but those who train themselves to remain focused in spite of them. Distractions are not just the obvious things. It's not just the scrolling, the binging, or the procrastinating. It's the subtle, sneaky things that feel urgent but aren't actually important. It's the opinions of others. It's worrying about what someone said behind your back. It's scrolling through someone else's highlight reel and doubting your own progress. It's trying to prove your worth to people who don't even value your presence. That's the distraction trap. It's not just about losing time, it's about losing direction. Distractions only have power when you grant them attention. That means they are powerless without your permission. You're not a victim of distraction. You are the gatekeeper of your own mind. Every time you stop building your vision to respond to something petty, you're telling the world your priorities are negotiable. But when you train yourself to be unbothered, you start filtering everything through one powerful question. Does this build my vision or does it break my focus? And here's the principle. If it doesn't build your vision, it's beneath your reaction. This is where discipline kicks in. Most people feed their distractions and starve their discipline, but you must reverse that. You must feed your discipline and starve your distractions. Because what you feed grows. You feed attention to the noise, it gets louder. You feed energy to the drama, it escalates. But if you feed focus, consistency, and clarity, your future grows. And when your future grows, your tolerance for nonsense shrinks. Let's bring this down to a simple, clear example. Imagine a young woman named Tasha who's building a small business online, handcrafted jewelry. She's passionate, she stays up late designing, shipping orders, learning marketing strategies. She's not rich yet. She's not famous. She's still figuring things out. One day, someone from her old friend circle posts a sarcastic comment on one of her product photos. Oh, look, another CEO making bead bracelets. How inspiring. Now, here's the moment of decision. Tasha can take that bait. She can clap back, spend hours defending her dream, texting friends to complain, letting the negativity poison her day. That's the distraction trap. Or she could take a breath, delete the comment, and get back to preparing her next product launch. That's focus. That's discipline. That's being unbothered. Now, fast forward 3 years. Tasha's brand is stocked in boutiques across the country. She's employing women in her community. She's mentoring new entrepreneurs. That same person who made fun of her, they're still posting sarcasm online, bothering people who are actually building something. See, that's the difference. The bothered person reacts, the focused person builds. You never win arguing with someone who has no investment in your purpose. And once you realize that, you'll stop trying to win battles that aren't even worth fighting. Being unbothered doesn't mean you don't feel things. It means you refuse to give power to things that do not serve your purpose. It means you know what your future requires and you honor that more than your ego. It means you've made peace with not needing to prove yourself. Every time someone misunderstands you, you must recognize that the enemy of greatness is not failure, it's distraction. Because failure at least means you tried. But distraction, that's slow death. That's 10 years of potential lost to what other people thought, said, or did. That's looking back at your life and realizing you weren't defeated by a lack of opportunity, you were drained by a lack of focus. But here's the beautiful part. You don't have to wait to fix this. You can decide today that you will no longer hand your power to small minds or small matters. You can declare that your destiny is too important to be delayed by distraction. Every time something petty tries to provoke you, you remind yourself, this is beneath my vision. You don't owe your energy to every argument. You don't owe your attention to every notification. You don't owe your explanation to every critic. What you owe is your consistency to your calling. The world will keep getting louder. The question is, will you train your mind to stay locked in no matter the noise? That's what it means to be unbothered. It's not just a mindset, it's a strategy. It's how you protect your peace, your focus, and ultimately your destiny. Training yourself to be unbothered is not about being emotionless or detached from reality. It's about making the deliberate choice to respond, not react. The difference between response and reaction is the difference between power and weakness, between growth and stagnation, between leading your life and being led by it. Most people go through life reacting to everything, to opinions. They respond to criticism with defensiveness, to offense with anger, to discomfort with escape. But that reaction-based living keeps them stuck in cycles of frustration and exhaustion. They stay triggered, agitated, and off course. Why? Because they never train themselves to pause, assess, and respond. Being unbothered is a high-level discipline. It's an internal decision you make over and over again to take control of your emotions, your energy, and your behavior, regardless of the external noise. It's the difference between letting life slap you around and standing tall in the middle of chaos, saying, I choose how I move. Weak minds react because reaction is easy. Reaction is emotional reflex. It requires no discipline. But response, that's power. That's control. That's clarity in motion. A response is intentional. It doesn't ignore emotion, it channels it. It uses the energy behind the emotion but directs it toward a purpose. Reaction is about the moment, response is about the mission. Think about it like training your body. When you lift heavy weights, you don't panic under pressure. You control your breath. You keep your form. You focus. You don't just yank the bar in fear. You train yourself to stay calm, stable, and intentional through resistance. The same principle applies to life under pressure. You must train your spirit the same way. You must breathe before you speak, think before you move, and center yourself before you allow anyone else to shift your mood. Let's take an example that illustrates this power in action. There's a man named Marcus who works as a regional manager for a company. He's built his leadership on consistency, integrity, and focus. One afternoon during a team meeting, one of his employees, feeling insecure and frustrated, calls him out publicly, accusing him of favoritism and poor decision-making. The room falls silent. All eyes turn to Marcus. Everyone's expecting him to fire back, get defensive, or shut the critic down. But Marcus doesn't flinch. He takes a breath, he looks the person in the eye and calmly says, I hear your frustration. Let's schedule time after this meeting to talk through your concerns one-on-one. I want to make sure you're being heard, and I also want to ensure this team stays focused on moving forward. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's not avoiding conflict, that's mastering it. Marcus didn't let ego take over. He didn't allow emotions to write checks his leadership couldn't cash. He chose response over reaction. And in that moment, his team didn't see a man avoiding confrontation. They saw a man in full control of himself. That's leadership, that's self-mastery. When you train yourself to respond rather than react, you take back control of your outcomes. You begin to realize that most situations don't require a heated reply, they require a higher perspective. You see the long game. You see that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every insult needs defending. Sometimes your greatest power is restraint, not silence out of fear, but stillness out of wisdom. The world constantly throws things at you designed to provoke you, to pull you out of character. But you must remember that every time you react impulsively, you give away your power. Every time you allow someone to press your buttons, it means they control you more than you control yourself. Training to be unbothered means making yourself unshakable, not because nothing affects you, but because you've mastered the pause. That pause between stimulus and response, that's where your future is decided. You have to ask yourself, who do I want to be when life presses me? Do I want to be the person who panics, lashes out, and regrets? Or do I want to be the person who thinks, speaks with purpose, and stays aligned with my vision? Because every response is a statement of identity. Every time you choose response over reaction, you reinforce the truth. I am not controlled by chaos. I command myself through it. This isn't just about dealing with conflict. It's about becoming the type of person who doesn't fold under pressure, who doesn't lose peace in traffic, who doesn't explode when life gets inconvenient. It's about becoming the kind of person who is so rooted in their vision, so grounded in their purpose, that nothing can pull them off center. That level of emotional stability is rare, but it's what separates those who rise from those who remain stuck. The path to being unbothered is paved with self-awareness, emotional control, and clarity of purpose. And when you begin choosing response over reaction consistently, you start noticing a shift. You're less tired because you're not wasting energy on drama. You're more focused because your mind isn't bouncing between emotional triggers. You're more respected because people feel your strength, not your loudness, your presence. Mastery begins where reactivity ends. When you train yourself to respond instead of react, you train yourself to lead, to build, to endure, and ultimately to win. Guarding your energy is one of the most critical disciplines you can master if you want to become a high-impact person. Energy is not just about how physically tired or awake you feel. It's your emotional fuel, your mental clarity, your spiritual momentum, your life force. And in a world that constantly pulls, demands, and drains, you must treat your energy like a sacred currency. You wouldn't leave your wallet full of cash in the middle of a busy street, unguarded, exposed. So why leave your energy out there for anyone to spend, steal, or waste? Every moment you spend being offended, arguing over meaningless things, stressing over what someone said, or doubting yourself, that's energy being spent. But it's not just any kind of spending. It's like throwing money into a fire and hoping it multiplies. You walk away more broke than before. And most people do this daily without even realizing it. They think they're defending their pride, standing up for themselves, keeping it real. But in reality, they're leaking power. They're investing in what doesn't grow them. They're financing frustration and calling it strength. High performers understand this at a deep level. They know that every ounce of energy must be aligned with production, not just reaction. They don't spend energy trying to prove themselves. They invest energy into building something real. Whether it's a business, a vision, a family, or a legacy, they guard their focus, their peace, and their clarity because they know distraction is expensive. They don't argue with people who aren't building anything. They don't waste their mornings scrawling and comparing. They don't let gossip into their spirit. Why? Because they understand that wasted energy is wasted purpose. You have to decide what matters most, proving a point or protecting your peace, being right or being ready, engaging with noise or building with focus. The truth is, you can't afford to give your energy to everything and still expect to walk in purpose. Your energy is your equity. Treat it that way. Every person, conversation, or thought that enters your space is either making a deposit into your future or making a withdrawal from your potential. You need to know the difference and act accordingly. Let's bring this into a real life situation. Picture a man named Elijah who's working hard to grow his business. He wakes up early, commits to his routines, and invests long hours refining his product and serving his clients. One day, a former coworker makes a sarcastic post on social media mocking people who think they're entrepreneurs now, clearly taking a jab at him. His phone starts buzzing. People tag him, screenshot the post, and send it his way, waiting to see what he'll do. Now, Elijah has a choice. He can take the bait, type out a long, fiery response, go back and forth defending himself in public, trying to make a point, or he can do something far more powerful, protect his energy. He thinks about it. Is this person contributing to his business? No. Is this person paying his bills, supporting his dream, or building anything of value? No. Is this reaction worth the momentum he'll lose today? No. So instead of responding, Elijah closes the app, makes a note for new content inspired by the experience, and dives into planning his next client pitch. He doesn't even mention it to anyone. He stays focused, he honors his energy, he wins silently. That's what protecting your peace looks like. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not avoidance, it's alignment. Elijah understood that if the enemy can steal your peace, he can delay your purpose. It doesn't always come in the form of disaster. Sometimes it shows up as pettiness, drama, and pointless engagement. If you take the bait, you don't just lose time, you lose the flow that's required to move your life forward. The most successful people in the world are not the busiest, they're the most intentional. They don't just wake up and give their best energy to whatever shows up. They decide where their energy goes, what deserves their attention, and what needs to be blocked, ignored, or postponed. You can scroll for 2 hours and feel mentally exhausted and emotionally empty, or you can spend that same time reading, building, creating, or resting, and walk away energized, sharper, and ready. That's why you must train yourself daily to check in with your energy. Before you speak, ask, is this helping or draining me? Before you respond to that comment, ask, will this move me forward or steal my focus? Before you argue, ask, is this worth the fuel it's going to cost? You don't owe your energy to everyone who asks for it. You don't have to defend yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't have to attend to every argument you're invited to. The more you grow, the more important your energy becomes. As your vision expands, so must your boundaries. Not because you're better than anyone, but because your calling is too big to be burdened by small things. You're here to build, to serve, to rise, and none of that can happen if you're constantly depleted by distractions. So guard your energy like treasure. Spend it where it grows your life. Invest it where it builds your future. And protect it like your purpose depends on it, because it absolutely does. You're anchored to your purpose, you become unshakable. Not because life stops throwing curveballs, not because the noise goes away, but because you're grounded in something bigger than yourself. Something that cannot be swayed by emotion, opinion, or momentary frustration. Purpose gives you direction. And when you have direction, you don't detour for distractions. Most people get pulled in every direction because they've never planted their feet in the one direction that matters. The one that leads them to what they're called to build, to become, and to contribute. But when your life is anchored to purpose, petty things no longer pull you off course. You're not easily moved because you're not emotionally led, you're mission led. Purpose makes you powerful because it simplifies your decisions. You stop asking, how do I feel about this? And you start asking, does this align with what I'm here to do? That one shift will change your life. Feelings are unstable. They fluctuate with circumstances. But purpose is steady. Purpose doesn't care if you're tired. Purpose doesn't care if people like you today or criticize you tomorrow. Purpose is immune to the opinions of those who aren't carrying your vision. When you're locked into your purpose, you don't have time to respond to every critic, every whisper, every sideways comment. You don't waste energy trying to prove your worth to people who don't even understand your mission. Why? Because when you're purpose-driven, you're not easily offended. You're too focused to be frustrated, too dialed in to be derailed, and too rooted to be rattled. That doesn't mean you don't feel hurt, anger, or pressure. It means those things don't lead your life. Your purpose does. Let's say there's a woman named Alina. She grew up in a tough environment, surrounded by voices that told her she wouldn't amount to much, but she had a fire in her. She wanted to build a mentorship program for young girls who lacked guidance, just like she once did. She didn't have connections, fancy degrees, or a big platform, but she had a purpose and she knew it. She started small, a few girls at a time. Free workshops at the community center, no applause, no spotlight, just impact. Then one day, someone from her past throws a jab online. They call her a fraud. They say she's pretending to be someone she's not. They question her qualifications. Others begin to share the post. People comment, her phone is blowing up. Everyone waits for her to respond, to defend herself, to fight back. But she does. Not because she's weak, but because she's anchored. She reminds herself, I'm building something too big to be bothered. She opens her laptop and finalizes the proposal for a new grant to fund expansion. She meets with her next group of girls and pours into them, and she does it with peace because her identity is not tied to approval, it's tied to assignment. That's what purpose does for you. It teaches you to stay the course, even when the storm rolls in. When you're anchored to purpose, you stop reacting emotionally to temporary circumstances. You stop being baited into battles that don't belong to your future. Every time life tries to rattle you, you respond with clarity, this is beneath my purpose. Purpose becomes the filter. It helps you decide what to engage with and what to walk past. It helps you determine what deserves your words and what only deserves your silence. Not everything requires your reaction. Some things just require your refusal to be moved. It's important to understand that being anchored doesn't mean being rigid. It means being grounded. It means knowing why you started, who you're becoming, and what you're building. When you know your why, you don't fall apart over every what. You're not reactive because you're rooted. That's what separates people who are constantly distracted from those who make lasting impact. It's not talent, it's not connections, it's not luck, it's clarity, it's commitment. It's being anchored in purpose when the applause fades, when the critics get louder, and when the journey feels heavy. That anchor keeps you from drifting when the tide rises. It keeps you stable when others around you are falling apart over things that don't even matter. So ask yourself this: are you living led by purpose or pulled by pressure? Are you driven by calling or tossed around by chaos? Because you cannot be both. Purpose is a choice. It's a commitment. And it's a reminder that what you're building is too important to let temporary things shake your foundation. The world doesn't need more reactive people. It needs more rooted people. It needs builders, leaders, creators, and change makers who are so locked into their mission that they're not moved by gossip, hate, or noise. It needs people who can look at petty distractions and say with full conviction, I'm building something too big to be bothered. Purpose is not just what you do, it's who you decide to become. And once you anchor yourself to that, everything else becomes background noise. You don't have to shout. You don't have to defend. You just keep building, keep showing up, keep planting seeds. Because when you're anchored to purpose, storms may shake the surface, but they'll never shake you. Being unbothered is not something you wake up with one day like a gift wrapped in confidence and calm. It is built slowly and intentionally through daily practices of stillness and mental mastery. You don't get strong in the storm. You get strong in the silence before the storm. That's where you train. That's where you sharpen the blade. If you wait until life gets loud to start cultivating inner peace, it's already too late. The power to remain unbothered begins in your quiet choices, in your discipline when no one's watching, and in your consistency when there's no applause. Stillness is not inactivity, it is strategic control. It's the decision to slow down your mind so you can speed up your focus. It's choosing reflection over reaction. It's creating intentional space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. That gap, however small, is where your power lives. In that pause, you are no longer a slave to your emotions. You become the architect of your behavior. That's where real transformation begins. You don't become unbothered by ignoring the world. You become unbothered by mastering yourself. And that kind of mastery doesn't come from motivation. It comes from repetition, from waking up early and choosing silence instead of distraction, from resisting the urge to pick up your phone before you pick up your thoughts, from practicing breath control when frustration wants to rise, from journaling your thoughts before the world tries to write its version of your day. These small daily disciplines are the foundation of emotional strength, and they are often built in solitude. The reason most people are reactive, scattered, and unstable is not because they lack ability. It's because they lack practice. They never trained their mind to be still. They never slowed down long enough to understand their thoughts, their triggers, their patterns. And what you never master will always manipulate you. But once you take command of your internal world, the external world loses its power to shake you. Stillness is a weapon in a world addicted to chaos. When everything around you is loud, news, social media, criticism, pressure, your stillness becomes your advantage. It allows you to hear what others miss, to think when others panic, to lead when others follow the noise. You don't get swept away by urgency because you've trained yourself to move with purpose. Let's look at an example. There's a man named Dev. He runs a startup that's scaling fast. Investors are involved. Staff are demanding. Pressure is constant. One morning, just before a major pitch meeting, his lead developer sends a message saying he's quitting. It's a gut punch. Tension rises. His phone is buzzing, Slack notifications, email alerts, a dozen opinions on what he should do. But Dev doesn't react. He closes the laptop, turns off his phone, and walks into the quiet room he set aside in his home. He breathes deeply, slowly. He sits in silence for 10 minutes, eyes closed, letting the noise drain away. No distractions, just breath, just stillness. Then, when he's centered, he comes back. He rewrites the pitch. He delegates the crisis. He handles the meeting with sharpness and strength, not because the situation was easy, but because he was trained. That's the edge stillness gives you. It gives you clarity when most people drown in confusion. It gives you command over your own nervous system. It trains your body to listen to your mind instead of your emotion. And once that happens, you don't get pulled into drama. You don't panic in pressure. You don't flinch every time something doesn't go your way. You stay grounded. You move with grace under fire. That's what mastery looks like. Not perfection, but composure. To practice this kind of mastery, you need to make it part of your life rhythm. Start your day in silence before the world starts talking. Breathe deeply when you feel tension coming. Reflect on your thoughts in a journal. Speak slower, listen more. Get familiar with stillness until it becomes your default setting. When others yell, you listen. When others rush, you pause. When others attack, you observe. Not because you're passive, but because you're powerful. Being unbothered is not about being cold or numb. It's about being precise, strategic, selective with your energy. You're not avoiding emotion, you're mastering it. You're not suppressing feeling, you're choosing your response. And that level of control is born in stillness. The people who win long-term are not the loudest. They're not the most reactive. They're the most centered. They've trained themselves to stay locked in even when everything around them tries to pull them off balance. That kind of poise doesn't come from ambition alone. It comes from a practiced mind, a grounded heart, a soul that's learned to breathe in the noise and still hear its own voice. So train daily. Sit in silence even when your mind wants to race. Breathe deeply even when the world pushes you to rush. Reflect intentionally even when distraction feels easier, because every moment you spend mastering your stillness is one less moment you'll waste being rattled by things that don't deserve your energy. This is the work champions do. Quietly, consistently, daily, and eventually when life tries to shake them, they don't move. They've trained for this, so must you. Tools, I want you to leave here today with a decision, not a feeling, a decision. From this day forward, I will not be moved by noise. I will not react to small minds. I will not be distracted by temporary emotions. I will not surrender my power to petty, because I am called to lead, to build, to rise, and you cannot rise if you're always reacting. Train yourself to be unbothered, and you will train yourself to walk in power, in peace, in purpose. Now go build, go lead, go become, and let nothing and no one move you.